had a few questions about the narcissist mindset and a few tells of what the narcissist mindset is. So I thought it could be interesting to share those with you. It's been pretty busy recently with a lot of other things, but I should be having a bit of time to catch up. But anyway, one of the things that is really helpful when we're dealing with toxic people, obviously, is to be able to identify when you're dealing with someone who is toxic. There are a lot of things that can take a lot of time to find out, because it takes a lot of time for them to show their real face. Oops, there we go. And at the same time, there's some tells that you're dealing with someone who is completely unhealthy. And I'll be sharing some of those with you now. So one of the things we should be looking for to understand if dealing with a person who is toxic is the kind of language that they're using, the kind of vocabulary that they're using. There's some words that show us the mindset they are in, and there's a very helpful model that I've shared in a video, which is the drama triangle. The drama triangle is a certain way of seeing the world, of seeing relationships between different people. And the drama triangle highlights toxic relationships between people. If we see people use these words, it shows us they've got a toxic framework, a toxic mindset. And if they have a toxic mindset, then it's a good idea to stay away from them. One of the ideas behind the drama triangle, by the way, is that people play games, and that when people are playing games, they're playing different roles. And if they're playing different roles, they are, of course, not being themselves. And if they're not being themselves, it's very hard to establish an authentic connection. That's something that you can't really get. And if you don't have an authentic connection, then you can't really get a healthy relationship in any shape or form. So, wait, here we go. So I've actually been sketching that out. So in the drama triangle, there are 3 different roles. The idea is, in the drama triangle, you have a person who plays the victim, a person who plays the perpetrator, there we go, I'm getting this wrong spelling-wise, the perpetrator. The perpetrator is the bad person, bad, mean, evil, etc. And we're used to thinking that you have a person who's acting mean towards someone else who is inferior to them, who's below them. So you've got the perpetrator, you've got the victim, and then you've got the person who plays the savior role. And this is one of the issues that we have with this kind of mindset, is the idea that you have a nice person who is the savior, who's the good person, who is there to help others. So you'd be assuming, and it's understandable to assume this, that if you have a relationship between a victim and a savior, that must be healthy, right? There we go, healthy. Because after all, you turn to someone who can help you, you turn to someone who's willing to be on your side, to support you, and so on and so forth. But there's an extra level of complexity to this where it gets rather toxic. And the notion is, in order to be a victim, you need someone who acts as perpetrator. Because if you don't have a perpetrator, you can't be a victim. Also, in order to be a savior, you need someone who is a victim. Because if you don't have a victim, you've got no one that you can save. So you can't play out the role. It's a bit akin to saying you want to play Harry Potter, you need someone to play Voldemort, and you need someone to play Dumbledore at the same time. At least, Harry Potter and Voldemort. So you need people to fall into these roles. Now, one of the issues of being a victim, of course, is that people are not empowered. They don't have the freedom, the flexibility to choose their life, to figure out what works for them, to build a life that works, and they get stuck in the victim situation. The problem with the savior is that if you save everybody who needs saving, you're out of a role. You've got no one left to save, so what do you do? Who do you become? That is akin to the Jungian archetype of the all-devouring mother who wants to help the children. So by helping the children, the mother will always tie their shoelaces for them because it's so difficult, because they can't do it themselves. And if the mother's always tying the shoelaces, well, then the children can't ever gain the ability to take care of themselves, to be free, to be autonomous. And that usually is supposed to be the goal as we end up becoming autonomous. So sometimes you think, well, the person's trying to help others. Sometimes the goal is to prevent people from becoming autonomous. And this is where it gets interesting. If you want to prevent people from becoming autonomous, instead of being a savior, you actually are a perpetrator. And the perpetrator is making sure that the victim stays a victim. So that's one angle. Somebody pretends to be a savior, but actually they're the perpetrator. There was a highly toxic so-called therapist in Paris that I mentioned sometimes, who was doing exactly this. She was pretending that she was the one person who would be able to save her so-called patients, her clients, and they'd have to turn towards her because otherwise they were completely lost. And lo and behold, she was just keeping them in a situation where they were dependent on her. Why? Well, because she was monetizing this kind of relationship. So you can think, well, is there any kind of monetization that is happening there? With a healthy therapist, it's quite different because the goal is to help people move forward and then end the relationship. With the unhealthy people, they continuously try to monetize. But there's another point that gets pretty interesting, which is when somebody plays victim. Here, let me do another triangle because that's going to get complicated otherwise. So they play victim. They try to find a savior. But actually, what we see happen, and they claim that there's a perpetrator. Oops. Go like this. A perp. Actually, what is happening is that the perpetrator is sort of irrelevant. It's often made up, completely imaginary. You get that with conspiracy theories. They hallucinate that there's some kind of organization somewhere that does terrible things. Actually, the victim replaces the role of perpetrator. So, there we go. The victim actually is a perpetrator. The savior actually falls down and becomes the real victim because they have to save the other person. So actually they're being used. And then for them to stay in the victim position, they actually need some kind of savior. And the savior is always the toxic savior because it's the person who's preventing other people from actually getting the life together, the life back on track. You'll note here, and this is the key I want to get to, specific words that come up, which are victim, savior, and perpetrator. But one of the key ones actually is the victim. When people have a victim mindset, this usually indicates that you have some kind of toxic drama triangle being played out. And the notion is, if you're a victim, is that you're disempowered, is that you can't actually get above a certain point. So you're stuck with the victim position. And you can think, objectively, some people are stuck. It's like, or some people have a bad situation. Yes, that doesn't mean they are below others. So you can always think of this in terms of relationships between people. And it simply goes, you have adults, and adults are equals. You go and see a dentist, the dentist can help you. So if the dentist helps you, the dentist knows what they're doing. The dentist, they're experts. They know how to help you. You have a problem. The dentist is not better or worse than you. Have a different skill set. If you go and see a dentist and you're an accountant and the dentist needs help with the accounting and you need help because you got a toothache, you help each other. You're completely equals. What happens when you have a savior is that you have someone in child mode and somebody playing the parent. And if you've got child-parent, then all of a sudden that's a asymmetric relationship, skewed, and that is a toxic relationship, because you're not actually dealing literally with a parent. You're dealing with somebody who is acting as they know something. Now, if you take the child can be simply replaced by a victim. The notion can be, life can be really tough and bad things can happen. So we can feel terrible about the poor person, something bad happened, and so we treat them like a little baby again, which can feel great. You know, if you're hurt, you want a little bit of sympathy. I understand it, and it's not particularly helpful. Instead, the vision I prefer, that I think is much healthier, is to say, tough stuff happens to us. We're adults. That's part of life. So you had a relationship with a toxic person. You got manipulated. It happens. It happens to a lot of people. So if it happens to you, it doesn't mean you're a victim. You were a victim of the toxic person. Okay, that isn't your identity. You're somebody who crossed paths with a toxic person. Think of it this way. If you walk on broken glass and you cut your foot, are you a victim of the broken glass? Or is it just something that happens that you walk and you cut your foot and then you disinfect it and move on? It doesn't become your identity. This is an issue, incidentally. If we get stuck in the victim mindset and the victim becomes the identity, what happens is that we look for somebody who plays the parent role. And people who play the parent role usually are the toxic saviors. This is, and here, let me break it down this way. The situation in which it would be okay for someone to play parent in your life is if they know better than you the details about your life, which is the case of parents usually. They know better than the children the details of the life. So they know better than the details of your life. They've got your best interest at heart, has to be demonstrated, and you are objectively incapable of figuring things out on your own. If those conditions are met, maybe it's okay to delegate to someone the parent role. But if you're capable of figuring things out, and probably if you're able to get onto YouTube, you're capable of figuring things out. If you don't know the people, or they're monetizing it somehow, and you don't know if they have the best interest at heart, then putting them in the position of parent probably is not the best idea. Probably it's not the wisest idea. And that's one of the issues, by the way, with a lot of the content you find online, the YouTube content about this topic. It's easy to think that I'm a victim. I'm looking for someone who has the knowledge. There we go, getting that wrong. The knowledge, who I'm putting up on a pedestal. That's one of the big things, pedestal. And I'm delegating to them the responsibility, and they are acting down and playing toxic savior because they're pretending they know better than everyone else. Normally you'll see that with a haughty demeanor, or they'll be condescending, or they will play the two types of parents. One is the critical parent, the other one is the nurturing parent. They'll try to nurture you and reassure you, and you get a bit of a sense like they're treating you like a baby. If this is the case, high likelihood is that you're dealing with a toxic savior who's keeping you in a victim position. But observe the vocabulary they use. When people use the victim narrative, the victim mindset, obviously I'm not questioning if bad things happened. I simply would suggest that that's part of life. It does make someone a victim. To get pickpocketed once in a city is unpleasant. I'm sure it's happened to everyone. Hopefully, not often. But it's part of life. And it's unpleasant, and it doesn't become someone's identity. Imagine if someone said, yeah, I'm a victim. I'm a victim because 35 years ago I was in Paris and someone stole my wallet. You'd think, you're really carrying this with you for 35 years? Seriously? It's a wallet. Now, if someone says, well, I'm a victim because I spent 25 years in a relationship with someone who turned out to be a narcissist, you go, yeah, I can imagine that being pretty bad. And, the question then becomes, to what extent, if we look at simply time, there we go, timeline moving forward, you've got, let's say, nice part of your life, the part with the toxic person, which ends, and then you have the remnants. How long does it take until we get our life back on track? For some people, it's basically going to take until the end of their life. Okay, if that's the time that's necessary, then it's a choice. It's really sad because the time that is left, that's pretty precious. So if we're able to reduce the time of toxicity and try to maximize the time of things being good again, well, that's quite helpful. But for that, we have to be mindful of who's got the victim mindset, who uses the words victim, perpetrator, other words to look out for, by the way. Big red flags of narcissism and manipulation are words such as guilt, to a large extent, shame, or well, yeah, no, actually, I'll take back shame. I wonder about that, but guilt. When people try to guilt trip others, actually, there's guilt. There's also, I was thinking about that the other day. It was, selfish. Selfish is a beautiful one. Selfish is the one where someone, both of them, guilt and shame, guilt and being selfish. You don't want to do something, and somebody tries to manipulate you. If they're trying to manipulate you, that's manipulation. That's something toxic happening. Guilt, selfish, that's pretty bad. Any kind of ad hominem attack. The ad hominem, okay, getting that wrong. The ad hominem attack, the ad hominem attack is, I'm not sure if I got this right, ad hominem attack is an insult. So you disagree with someone and they go, if you disagree with me, it means that you get a lot of that, you're a fascist. Like, really? Really? You think I'm a fascist because, of some whatever disagreement? So that's one of the classic ones. Or you're a communist. That's also, so it's basically the same thing. You think that there should be a social safety net. That makes you a communist. Well, not really. If you look at what historically communism was, it's not exactly wanting some unemployment insurance. You can debate how much, what's fair, what isn't fair. 40 years might be a bit exaggerated, but, maybe more than a week. I don't know. That might be my European side. You can debate it without the ad hominem attacks, without insulting. So that usually is one of the things that happens. And guilt and selfish are basically forms of ad hominem. Or the selfish. You're selfish, it's an ad hominem. And then trying to guilt trip someone. So those are a few things to pay attention to. Look for people who've got the victim mindset, people who are reenacting the drama triangle, people who claim that you are the victim of someone else. That's a really bad sign if they're saying that. Someone else is to blame for the bad thing that's happened to you. A reminder about this, by the way, and this is also one of the reasons why it is super toxic to have this mindset, is we can think of, it's called the locus of control. I did this in a video years ago, but I think it might be helpful to remind people of it. The locus of control is basically saying, where roughly do people see the level of control? You got 0% in the middle, you've got the external and the internal. And people usually fall somewhere on this line. So saying, you got some lunatics who say everything that happens in the world is because of me. Okay. And some people say nothing that happens to me is my responsibility. And people usually are somewhere in the middle saying, well, it's a mixed bag of stuff that happens to me, stuff I did, stuff I didn't do, and so on and so forth. And by the way, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask the questions. I'm not quite sure how long I'm going to make this. I'm sort of testing a new setup, so don't hesitate to ask questions. So yes, locus of control, roughly we're somewhere in the middle. The question is, are people on majority, in the majority, are they on the internal side or are they on the external side? And that makes a huge difference. If you're one notch on the external side, that means overall you blame other people. Overall you blame other things. Some lunatics will be pretty much completely on the external side, but usually what the narcissists do is they will have one of these for, let's see how to do this, good things, and one for bad things. So the healthy way to do it would be to say that we are roughly at the same point, whether we're on the internal or external. So it could be one notch there, and it could be one notch on the internal overall. I prefer to basically say, by the way, that we're pretty much on this side. But the way that toxic people do this is they will say the good things that happen are only because of me, and the bad things that happen to me are only because of external things. In other words, nothing bad that happens to me has got anything to do with me. It's all because of other people. I'm a victim of other people. But if something good happens to me, it's because I'm a genius. So you got these two things, like which one are you? Are you a victim? Are you a genius? Or is it a mixed bag, and so on? But for them, they'll be using this kind of, say, hypocrisy, going from the good things are because I'm a genius and the bad things are because I'm a victim. But then they'll flip it around and say, well, that's me. When it comes to you, it's completely different. The good things that happen to you are only because of external factors. You've got no merit. But the bad things that happen to you, they serve you right. So look, when people flip the scenarios, flip the models around, depending if it's them or other people. And usually they'll be playing something along the lines of bad things happen, it's because of, other things. Or they'll be saying, well, bad things happen to a population or group of people. It's because, if it's external things, let's put it down here, then they'll be talking about being victims. The reality is we always have more than nothing that we can control. Here, let's do it like this. So what's under our control? Under control, you've got 0%, you've got 100% of things. Obviously, we control more than nothing, but we don't control 100% of everything. So we'll control to some, X%, and then the rest is external. That's the external part. And here we have the internal part. So if you want to be healthy, or if we want to be healthy, we focus on what is the internal part we can control. And the rest, well, that's luck, good luck or bad luck, who knows, we see. But we need to focus on controlling the internal part, because if we don't control what we can control, then we're not controlling our life. And that's exactly what the narcissists want. They want people to focus on the external bit, abandon the internal bit, because that way they become powerless and dependent. And they're much easier to manipulate. Much, much, much easier to manipulate. And yeah, so back to the drama triangle. We had the drama triangle that was, here we go, drama triangle, so you remember this. There's a solution to the drama triangle, which is called the empowerment dynamic. So TED, empowerment dynamic. Sorry, it's a bit late over here. Empowerment dynamic. And instead of being a drama triangle, the goal is to break away from the drama triangle. So instead of having a perpetrator, you have a challenger. So the challenger will say, well, you got the status quo, but maybe you want to move things a little bit. So it's not the perpetrator putting the other person down. It's saying, listen, we can move things around a bit. We can make things better. We can improve things. So let's try to improve things. That's a challenger. Then another role that people can play is the coach. The coach is asking, so how are we going to do it? So instead of having the savior, the toxic savior, who says, let me tell you how to do it, the coach will say, well, let's figure out how to do it. I will help you figure it out, but you can figure it out because you're not a victim, because you're a human being, you're an adult, you're someone whom we can work together to make things better. So we're going to do our part and try to do that. Instead of having a victim, you have a creator, also known as the hero. And it's very different when someone treats you as a hero rather than being a victim. And when you're on this kind of dynamic, then you get the support that you need from both people, and you give yourself the support also, which is significantly better than being in the drama triangle with the savior, so toxic savior, the perpetrator, and the victim. So, I'd sometimes get questions about what can you do to improve things, to find quality content, to find ways to get your life back together. To me, the biggest thing is figure out what you come across that is reinforcing the drama triangle, whether it's content, your own behaviors, what you're looking for, and try to break this dynamic. If you're looking for a savior, that's a toxic situation to be in. I understand it. I mean, I've been there myself. Most people, I understand it. And being in the savior situation is not a healthy situation to be in. You want to break out of this so that you can come across, break out from the victim situation, so you can be a creator. And the number one thing is figure out who is treating you like a victim on either side and break these dynamics. Anyone who's doing that, treating you like a victim, talking down to you, acting as though you can't figure things out, or being haughty, or giving you the emotional support to change nothing, these are not people who've got your best interest at heart. They might just be playing roles, or they think they've got the best interest at heart and they're just playing games. In all cases, best thing to do, stop playing the game. Stop positioning yourself as a victim. Don't play savior for other people. It's not your responsibility to save people. If you know someone who's got money problems, it isn't your responsibility to solve the money problems for them unless you're a financial advisor and getting paid for it. But for most people, just don't do it. Like, if an adult can't figure out the finances, there are enough courses to figure out finances. And if they don't want to do the courses to figure out finances, maybe they don't want to solve their own problems, which is fine as their responsibility. And it's not necessarily up to you to try to sort this out. So identify the toxic behaviors, cut off or stop the toxic situations, because that's exactly what's keeping you in the victim situation. And then look for people who can challenge you constructively. Doesn't mean put you down, simply means challenge you. Or content that does that. A coach that helps you figure out how to do it. Sometimes you can self-coach. And the best therapists, by the way, they're good challengers, are excellent challengers and excellent coaches. And that way you have a chance of becoming the creator, the hero of your life, and building up this this positive dynamic. So number one thing to do, break off any toxic dynamics, identify them, stop them, and observe who's putting you in them, and aim for the healthy dynamics. There we go. This was completely improvised. Thank you so much for everyone who tuned in. I'm going to end the live stream now. I think I'll be doing some more soon on video soon. But thank you for showing up, and I hope everyone is doing well. Take care.